Today from r/LetsNotMeet. Campus Stalker. For some context, I'm a 32-year-old female. This happened to me when I was about 25 or 26. I work full-time as a researcher at a university, which is where these encounters took place. I'm not a professor or anything, and because of my age at the time, I could have easily been mistaken for just another student wandering around the campus. On some days when the weather was nice, I would prefer to spend my lunch hour strolling around the university grounds outside, or sitting underneath a shady tree on a bench, enjoying the time I was not sitting in a cramped corner of a lab. On one of these days, I was sitting on a bench enjoying the fresh air, and a male student walking by asked if he could sit next to me. I'm a pretty shy and awkward kind of person, so even though I really would have preferred sitting alone, I said sure. He initiated simple conversation, to which I obliged, but being careful not to be too forthcoming. He mentioned he had seen which department building I came and went from, which slightly alarmed me, given I had never seen this person in my life before. But I pushed the thought from my mind. After all, the weather had been decent lately, and I had spent nearly all my lunch hours for the past week outside. He asked if I was studying within the mentioned department, to which I told him that I was not a student, but rather I worked there. He told me he was an engineering student, and then followed up with asking me out for coffee sometime. I apologized and told him I had a boyfriend and would have to decline. We parted ways after that, and I assumed I probably wouldn't see him around again. About a week or two went by, and I was spending another lunch hour outside on campus, sitting on a different bench somewhere. Seemingly out of nowhere, the same man from before asked if he could sit next to me again. Admittedly, I don't remember what he started talking to me about first. My mind was reeling, and I was rather uncomfortable having to potentially turn this guy down a second time. Sure enough, he asked me again if we could go for coffee sometime. I apologized, and reminded him that I had a boyfriend, and would not be meeting him for coffee. And again, he left after that. I was feeling rather anxious now, but it still hadn't reached a level where I felt I had to be too concerned. A few days later, I had finished work and was leaving the building to walk where I had parked my car. The university charges a fortune for parking passes, even if you're employed by them, so I always opted for free street parking about a 10-minute walk away from campus. My walking route would take me down several quiet residential streets, with minimal car traffic. Even pedestrian traffic was pretty sparse on the busiest days. It wasn't until I was about halfway to my car, down one of these quiet back streets, that I had noticed someone walking directly across the street from me, but keeping a few paces behind. I noticed him for my peripheral vision, and I didn't want to flat out turn and stare at him. It wasn't uncommon to see someone else by any means. I was just always trying to be aware of my surroundings when walking the streets alone. I had to make a few turns coming up anyway, and the chance they would be going the same way as me was slim. But he did. He made all the turns I did, still walking on the sidewalk across from me, a few steps behind. I still did not want to look at whoever this was. I didn't want him to know that I was aware of what I thought he was doing. I quickened my pace to a speedy walk. I was approaching the first of the two busier streets before I would reach my car. His pace quickened to keep up with me. That was the moment I panicked. The moment I was sure he was indeed following me. After that, I started a full-out jog across the first of the busier streets. He ran to keep up behind me, and was now on the same side of the street I was. I was now nearly at my car. I had to cross the last busy street and get about 100 meters, and I would be there. But it was crossing the street that worried me. I often had to stop and wait a good minute or so before it was clear enough to do so. If this were the case, he would catch up with me. And if the stars aligned, as soon as I made it running past the busy street, I had a gap to cross. I booked it as fast as I could, finally turning around once I had made it to look and yell at the man who had been pursuing me. It was him. I could have suspected, but now it was confirmed. It was the engineering student who I had turned down for coffee. "Stop following me!" I yelled at him from across the busy street. "Can I just talk to you?" he yelled back. I didn't even answer him. The answer should have been obvious from the start. and I was certainly never going to give my time to anyone who had just followed and then chased me for about 1 kilometer. I kept moving quickly to my car, so determined to get the hell out of there that I didn't even care if he saw which car was mine. He had given up following me and never tried to cross the road too, to my relief. I got home and broke down. I mean, worse things had happened to other people, no doubt, and I was not harmed, fortunately. But I was shook. I had some anxieties walking to and from work after that. It wasn't long before a coworker and I would walk most of the distance back to our cars together after work. I even changed where I started parking for a time. A few weeks had passed since the incident, and I had not seen him around campus at all. I had started spending my lunches in the lab instead of outside, but occasionally I would go to the student center to buy lunch instead. This one particular day, the food court in the student center was packed, almost shoulder to shoulder. I was standing in line at a burger stall, and I heard a guy try and get someone's attention through the crowd. I look up, and it's him again, waving to me and trying to make his way through the people. I panicked, and even though I'm terribly shy, I started a scene and yelled to him to leave me the hell alone. His face dropped instantly as people stared at us, and he slinked back into the sea of students. My heart was pounding, and I was shaking. I don't even remember if I ended up getting food after that. I went back to work, and from then on, was even more focused on my surroundings than I ever was before. It's been 5 or 6 years since then, and I still work at the university. I'm so relieved to say I never saw him again after the food court, and I haven't had any other harrowing accounts on campus. I'm still diligent about being aware of my surroundings, especially when I have to walk to and from campus alone. I never asked the guy's name, so I couldn't even report an incident to campus police or anything. All in all, I'm just glad I never saw him again, and I can only hope he never did this to any other girl before or after me. So to the guy trying to get coffee, let's not meet.